Good evening and welcome to this week's episode of Coach's Corner. My name is Dwayne Dwyer. I go by the Mindset Coach,
And I am the Uncle Junior, and I go by the consistency coach.
and we are your coaches for Coach's Corner. Listen, as always, we look forward to these conversations. So, like I tend to say every week, if you are here and you're going to just soak up this information and then just continue doing the exact same thing you have been doing prior to this conversation, and this is not the place for you. However, if you are here and you're looking to make change, if you're looking to grow and do better for yourself, for your loved ones, for your family, for your community, and looking for the best version of what life has to offer you, then you are in the right place and the right time. You were meant to be seated in that chair, looking at that screen, so that you can hear these voices. And as we look forward to reading your messages as it come through during this conversation. So before I go any further, I like to talk to my brother real quick because as always, it's great to see him. So the Uncle Junior, the consistency coach. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. This is
Man,
just happened.
yeah. Been working. Getting a lot of stuff taken care of around the house and stuff like that. Being off for the summer affords me the opportunity to get a lot of things done around the house and catch up on projects and stuff like that. So I can officially say that the major yard work for the year has been completed,
That's
So I still got to trim some bushes and stuff like that, but the trees that was supposed to get planted, the garden, the plants, everything that was supposed to get planted and moved around is done. So,
that's what I'm talking about. I
yeah,
love it.
I'm actually early.
A sense of accomplishment, isn't it?
Oh man, I was out there working, man. It was just getting it was a process.
It's
Just
a
over and
process.
over, thing after thing after thing after thing. But accomplishment after accomplishment after accomplishment. Because the first thing is, you get the miles in and you run, so you feel better, you're tired. And then after that, you go work in the yard, you cut the grass, boom,
Mhm.
now you look around and yard look good. And then you plant some stuff and you move some stuff and you just like, so I enjoy doing I enjoy being out in the yard and working out there and and just seeing the growth and seeing how much my yard has changed, in the last few years since I bought this house. So
As I'm listening to this, right, I'm enjoying it, and here's why. Because I'm listening to you talking about a transformation that's happening in your yard,
mhm.
being able to see it transform, and that sense of accomplishment that you experience every year when you start making these moves and planting and cutting and trimming and all that other great stuff. It kind of reminds me of a lot of the conversations that we have here on Coach's Corner.
Mhm.
Because at the end of the day, that's really what life is all about. You're going to go through a series of events, certain things, so forth and so on. You're going to be pruned here. You're going to be cut here. You're going to be bruised up a little bit over here. And, this is going to change and this is going to change. And by the time you start doing some reflection and looking back over your life, you realize, like, wait, there was a transformation happening right up under my nose. And I had no idea that it took place. So
Mhm.
that's why I love listening to you say that.
Man, it's funny you said it. That's a great analogy for life. The gardening, working in the yard because everything don't always work out. Like I planted a tree a couple years ago.
Yeah.
I dug it up this year. It died. I maybe it was something wrong with the soil. Maybe the tree got a fungus. Who knows? But sometimes we try things and it don't work. But that's okay. That's
Mhm.
part of the process. So I moved that and I planted a different type of tree. And sometimes you put things in the yard and you realize it don't do good right here because it's getting too much sun or it's getting too much shade or the ground or the soil. So and that's just what life is, the same thing. Like throughout our lives, we have experienced a lot of different things. We've tried a bunch of different things. Some things work, some things didn't work. Some things we had to replace with a better version. So the garden and yard work and the transformation, bro. That's a great analogy. So I'm glad you kind of highlighted it or kind of mentioned it because I was never really, yeah.
It wasn't me, bro. It was the Bible. Like
Oh,
it's
there,
like literally it's all throughout the Bible. It talks about
yeah.
that. Oh, absolutely. I love it when people start talking about their garden and things of that nature because it takes me right back there. Um, but yeah, man, I love it, and
Yeah.
I just hate that I can't get out there and do it like I used to because I used to have fun. I used to really enjoy it.
And here's another one. Some things you plant and some things in life, you're going to see immediate or very fast success.
Hmm.
Some things like trees, you may not see until the next year till you really get to see if it if the soil really took it.
Right.
So same thing with life.
Hmm.
We're gonna make changes, we're gonna make adjustments, and sometimes we're gonna see immediate results, and sometimes we're not. So,
Yeah.
but we got to keep working it. Got to keep working at the garden. Got to keep working on ourselves.
Yeah.
And we just spent 6 minutes talking about garden and transformation. We got
It's
to do a
okay.
transformation show.
Hey, man, listen. I'm here for it. I'm here for it.
I'm writing down
Um,
transformation
that
show.
that being said, man, I want to kind of take the opportunity to acknowledge the bestest. Yes, I said that. The bestest chat on social media. We greatly appreciate you guys joining us again. You can be any place else, but you chose to be here with us, and we do not take that lightly. So we want to make sure that we acknowledge you and appreciate you, simply because, like I said, you are a functional part of the show. Like we said before, without you, there would be no Coaches Corner. So again, thank you for being here, and it is our sincerest desire to serve you well during this conversation. So if you got anything else, man, or if not, you ready to just dive into it?
Man, I want to get in. I want to get into the conversation. I want.
Okay.
I want to go. I'm ready to go now.
Have you ever felt overwhelmed by your emotions, unsure of how to navigate the storm within? If so, you're not alone. Many of us struggle with understanding and managing our emotions, especially during turbulent times. In today's episode of Coach's Corner, we're diving deep into the topic of becoming emotionally unshakable. Inspired by Robert Greene's The Laws of Human Nature, we'll explore practical strategies to help you understand the root of your emotional reactions, recognize triggers and patterns, transform emotional challenges into opportunities, build resiliency, and thrive even in the midst of emotional turmoil. We aim to share profound insights and personal experiences, providing you with valuable tools to navigate your inner world and achieve greater success and fulfillment. Don't forget to check out the show notes for a free download for a free downloadable to help you apply these concepts in your life. Join us for an enlightening conversation that promises to equip you with the answers and strategies you've been searching for. So let's get it started. I do recall, um, when we were talking backstage, talking about how this show is going to go. One of the things you said is that, well, we need to talk about something first before we get into all that. And I agree with you. I
Mhm.
really do. So if you don't mind, like in your own words, like how would you differentiate, if you will, between emotions and feelings?
All right. So when I said that, I didn't necessarily have the answer. I just thought that we need to make sure that we define what what emotion is, because I think it's a word that we use all the time, just like the word feeling,
Yeah,
and I think that, and even when we use the word mood, I think these words all kind of are similar. They're all under the same umbrella, but I think they are different. And I'm gonna try. That's why I'm glad I got the opportunity to go first, because it gives you opportunity to come in and clean up a little bit of my definition,
if I
just
can.
in case. Because I don't know. I'm kind of had a question. It's like, a lot of times we use words, but I think sometimes even we use them, but sometimes we don't even understand some of the words that we use.
Yeah,
So I'm wondering if I really know what this word means. So what I think it means is that what an emotion is how I may not feel, but it's like quick. It's like when it's like I look at it as something initially, an initial feeling, but before the feeling. So it's like if coach says something to me, that emotional response, whatever it is, whether it be sad or upset, like I get some news, hey, so and so passed. that initial feeling or that initial thought of sadness is what I think the emotion is. But I
Mm,
think the feeling sad is different.
okay.
Man, I don't know, man.
No,
Help,
no, no, you get it.
help me out. I think
You-
I'm tiptoeing around it, but I don't think I've landed the plane.
So the confusing part about emotions and feelings is number one, they're not the same, but they're interconnected. And because they're interconnected, it's easy to confuse one with the other. So emotions are more so of a it's kind of it's complex, if you will. And so within the complexities of emotion exist three things. You have the subjective reality of the thing, you have the physiological response of the thing, and you also have the behavioral response of the thing. So that would be the three parts of emotions. And when you really think about it, as I know these people in the chats are already like chomping at the bit because we talked about this before, right? When you really think about it, it really talks about the total being of who you are, to where the feelings is the subjective, is the subjective, how can I say it? It's like the subjective opinion of the emotion. So, like, say for example, if I've never been attacked or bitten by a dog,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm afraid of dogs because of the information that you gave me about dogs.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that would be more in line with like the subjective experience that I never experienced, right? Because I got that from you. So now, from an emotional standpoint, I have that, that thought about the dogs. I heard what you said about dogs. I don't want to be bitten by a dog. I cannot run a dog, therefore I cannot get away, and all that other great stuff. So now that causes a physiological experience in me. My heart starts beating real fast. I start sweating whenever I see a dog. The dog ain't even thinking about me, by the way. But all those things are happening, and then my emotional response can be ultimately flight because I am not going to fight. Right. So those could be, that's how the emotions factor within me. Well, the feelings, I'm not even in the presence of a dog. Like there is not a dog within miles, but just me thinking about a dog, like I hate dogs. I don't want to be bothered with a dog. So that would be the feeling that goes along with it, right? It's not around me. I don't feel threatened. I don't have the physiological response that goes along with it. But because I've heard what you said about dogs previously, and I'm no place around the dogs, I have this feeling in relation to dogs. That's kind of like the best way I can sum it up. Emotions drive a physiological expression to where it changes something internal, your heart rate, you sweating, things of that nature. And then there can be a response from an emotional side standpoint. The feelings is the subjective thought of that thing that comes from the emotion. And I'm not even, exposed to it or whatever, but I automatically have a thought based upon it.
All right. So if I'm hearing what you're saying, I wrote it down in my little scribbly scrap. Emotion is pretty much so when when someone sees a dog, anybody, even myself who is not scared of dogs, if I see a dog and I have, or if a dog is charging at me, then my that emotional response is the response to the danger.
Correct.
Right, I'm responding in the moment to danger. So that emotional, that what I'm feeling is that emotional fear. But that's different than when the dog ain't around and I'm just like, man, I don't like dogs, man.
Correct.
Hey man, you want to go to cook up? No, they got a dog over there.
Correct.
Even though I'm not in the presence of a dog, that's where the feeling is, but the emotion is usually a response to something, and it can be physical.
Right. That's the
Mm,
thing that triggers your fight or flight.
okay.
So when you talked about that dog charging you, what
Mm-hmm.
happens at that point is that everything shuts down, right?
Mm-hmm.
Go gadget feet, right? So
Yeah.
everything
Yeah.
everything shuts down, and that's when you get all of the adrenaline rush, and that's when everything is directed at your stamina, is directed at your heart rate, and directed at your breathing, and directed at your endurance. And you can run faster and farther than you've ever had because you're trying to get away from that dog.
All right. I need another one. Another response. I need another example. So I think I got one. I'm gonna try one.
Mhm.
So let's look at happiness,
Okay.
right? When I go to work and I'm gone all day long and I've had a rough day, when I come through the house, when I initially see my wife, I'm happy, right?
Mhm.
There's that overwhelming sometimes feeling of happiness, right? But when I'm at work and I'm just thinking about, hey man, it's gonna be nice when I get home. I get to go hang around my wife and I'm having this feeling of happiness. That's the feeling. The first part when I see her is the emotion. All right. I think I'm
Because
good
because now you're in the presence.
now.
When you're in
Mm-hmm.
the presence of the thing, that's
Mm-hmm.
where, because you have that experience. However,
Mm-hmm.
you process that experience from a cognition standpoint, that's what's happening. So you're in the presence, you're processing it, good, bad, or indifferent, and then that thing causes. Boy, this is a whole, man. I just realized that it causes
Mm-hmm.
it
And
causes.
sometimes we get around the wrong other people and be like, ah,
So I'm saying it
yeah,
causes a physiological response, right?
yeah.
And then the behavior comes along with it.
Mm,
So that is the emotions behind it. So that's why I say a lot of times we were confusing the two, right?
mm-hmm.
Throughout
Yeah.
years and years and years of understanding, we were confusing the two, and then we just use them interchangeably because
Mm,
they're connected. So when I'm not in the presence, that's the feeling. When I'm in the
mm-hmm.
present, that is because of the emotions. But
Mm.
then the other side to it is that, can I use the emotions when I'm not in the present? And that's a whole nother conversation within itself, because
Okay.
you can literally use the emotions when you're outside of the presence of a thing, to where the physiological response that you have along with the behavior can actually now draw the thing to you. But again,
So
whole nother
I
conversation.
ain't gonna do that. Yeah, I ain't gonna do that. I
Whole
I
nother
had an
conversation.
example, but I'm gonna say nah. I hope to. I'll hit the pause button on that one.
No, that's good. That's good. No, great questions. I'm
Yeah,
glad you continue to drill in it.
yeah.
Um, I hope that it's I know it's not crystal clear to everybody who is listening. If you just were totally confused, like, I hope our explanation cleared it up some.
Mm-hmm.
But again, I think the continuation of understanding on that, and the research that you do on your own, will provide additional clarity. And I think it's important to start there. And I'm glad you brought that up in the beginning, because that's a very good segue into the conversation that we're having today. And the conversation that we're having today is all about how to become emotionally unshakable. Okay. And so, in the first section that we want to discuss, is understanding the root of emotional reactions. Now, that said, I kind of gave a great segue about the dog experience, right? Because I had that dog experience when I was a little kid. So,
Mm-hmm.
in your opinion, why do you think it is so challenging for people to recognize when their emotions are in control?
Whew. I think based off of what we've talked about and it being like that initial response, I think a lot of times people confuse that initial response and recognizing their emotions with this is just who I am. So if every time, someone says something to me sideways or whatever like this, my initial response is to, right, is to do this, right? And to get aggravated or angry or frustrated, and then I walk around with this is who I am. Yes, that may be who you are, but every time you do that, you're portraying a certain um not certain level, what's the word? You're portraying who you are, or you're portraying a side of yourself that may not be welcoming to other people. I'll put it like that, right? So when every time someone says something to you, whether it's bad or not, you look at them with like they shouldn't have asked you that question, right? And when you say, "Well, this is just who I am," I think that causes a wall and it prevents you from being able to progress and being able to grow as a person. So I think just based off, to this question, why you think it's so challenging for people to recognize it is because I think people can separate, their emotions versus who they are. And the control piece comes from not understanding the two. I think so. Yeah.
I do like that response, and I'm agreeing.
Hmm.
Um, if I can add to it, it's a couple of things from my perspective. First and foremost, the conversation we just had, we don't have that with our children. We don't help them to understand that there's a difference between emotions and feelings. It might be a bridge too far for them at that age, but I also believe that we sell our children short by thinking that they don't have the ability to understand. And maybe it's probably because we don't necessarily understand it because we can't break it down to such a degree that they can understand. I've always said that if you can't explain something to the degree that a seventh grader can understand it, you don't understand it. So I will start there. I think first and foremost, we don't understand emotions. We don't understand feelings. Second thing is that we are raised and conditioned for control. What does that mean? That means somebody has to be in control. What is that? Okay, so how do we view control? Well, whatever force that exists within any given space that gets the opportunity to exhibit its will or express its will within the space to make everything move and function. Okay, so now, when you look at it and not understanding emotions and not understanding control, right? Um, well, how do you get to the point of understanding where your emotions fall within the scope of hierarchy? Well, within you, your emotions, like it's an entity. Your mind is an entity. You are spirit, so your spirit is an entity. So we have to get to the point in regulating ourselves to such a degree to where your emotions are not at the top of the scale. A lot of times, what ends up happening is that we move to the beat of the drum of the Pied Piper. I'm just using that as an example. So whatever is the loudest horn that we're hearing, we're listening to that. And that thing becomes music to my ear. And the more I hear it, the more I digest and the more I process it. And then I look to my left and I look to my right, and it seems like everybody is doing it. And so, what does that mean? That means that everybody that you pay attention to, they're moving at the beat of their emotions because they have not regulated themselves to such a degree that your emotions are put into balance. When you don't put your emotions into balance, your emotions is driving a train. Therefore, whatever you're thinking about, whatever makes you feel good, I'm chasing happy, kind of like going back to what you said just previously. I'm thinking about what makes me happy. I'm thinking about what makes me sad. And so the things that make me sad, I structure my life to such a degree that I never experience those again. The things that make me happy, I want to replay those things. And so I move to the beat of the things that make me happy, but there's no relevant data that says that this thing, if one plus one is two, that equals happy. So because we're chasing this fictitious notion of I just want to be happy, I just want to be happy, I just want to be happy, but yet I gotta avoid this dog because dogs bite and they hurt, and I don't like dogs. I'm scared of snakes. I'm scared of spiders, and so I was put a wall up, and I prevent this from happening. But I'm chasing happy, and we think what we're doing is good because everybody we know is doing it. So it's like not putting things in proper order within yourself because one, nobody ever taught that to me. Two, I'm chasing happy because that's what makes me feel good. And three, everybody else is doing it. So it becomes a herd mentality. So when you look at why do I think it's challenging because they've never challenged themselves to think otherwise.
I'm listening and I'm wondering, consequences and behavior comes up for me is what I'm thinking about, right? I think sometimes it's challenging. I think sometimes people get in their emotions and then sometimes they display a certain behavior. And let's say it's negative, right? And I think that if there are no consequences that come from these behaviors, that come from these emotions, I think sometimes people never really recognize or understand that their emotions are in charge or they're in control, you know? And I look at, all right, all right. So I let's take a relationship, right? And let's take a traditional relationship. And let's say, for instance, one person in the relationship is constantly getting in their emotions and being verbally abusive to the other person, right? Let's say, for instance, it's a woman who is being verbally abusive to the husband, right? I know we don't like to use that a lot of times. We just call it yelling, right? But the reality of it is, it's verbal abuse. Let's call a spade, right? When you yelling at your husband or he yelling at you, that is verbal abuse. Y'all don't call me. I'm just a messenger, right? When you go to court, when they come to your house, that's what they're gonna call it, verbal abuse. They
Wait,
ain't gonna say just yelling.
wait. Let me qualify that. Not
Okay,
just a messenger, a licensed messenger, by the way.
there you go. So, with that being said, did I get off track? Let me put the question at? Where's the question? Where's the question? I got to get back on track. All right. So the behavior and the consequences. When you keep coming in and you're yelling, let's back to the example, yelling at your husband, yada yada yada. And he says, okay, well, it's not a big deal. It's okay. I'll just brush it off. This is how it is. Well, it can be hard for you to get in control of that behavior because you are being allowed to be verbally abusive because of your emotions. And because this behavior is not going unchecked, or because there are no consequences for this verbal abuse, a lot of times people may look at it or as this is just me, this is who I am, I'm just yelling, I can't control myself, this is just who I am. So I think that can play a part in all of this too. And I hope I didn't go too far off, but I wanted to put the behavior and stuff in there.
No, I don't think you went too far at all. I think you're still within line of the conversation because I agree with you. I think in conjunction with that, you have you have you have two different schools of thought. One
Hmm.
school of thought says, and I'm just using your example. One school of thought says that you should express yourself. Don't keep your emotions in check. Let everybody know how you feel. Like speak your truth, all that other good stuff. Then the other school of thought say, hey, little boys don't cry. Suck it up, get over it, wipe the dirt off. Don't let people see you cry as a man. So now you end up moving forward in life, and one side think that, hey, we're emotional experts because we've been practicing emotions our entire life. And I'm exaggerating when I say experts, but we've been practicing being emotionally expressive our entire life. And my parents told me that I'm really good at expressing myself. And my teachers really tell me that as well because I do it so often. But then on this side here, everything that this group of people do, like it has no emotions tied to it. Like, sure, it hurts to lose a football game, but get over it. We got to practice on it. Hey, listen, I know this don't feel good, but you know what? We're gonna come back and we're gonna get the gridiron on Monday. We're gonna practice hard and we're gonna be ready for Friday night. So everything within this on this side says express yourself about that much, but then let it go. So now when they come together, and then like you said, she is expressing herself, and on this side, he, on the other hand, here's the same thing. Women are emotional creatures. Women are emotional creatures. Women are emotional creatures. So now when the emotions show up, he thinks it's normal.
Yeah, just accept it.
He accepts it. And I'm not saying good, bad. I'm not saying right, wrong, and different.
Exactly.
What we have to understand is that both of them need to change. This one needs to stop accept. This one needs to stop over expressing, and this one needs to stop accepting at the level of abuse. Come together and change that. And I don't want to get into how to fix it right now. But again, to your point, I'm loving that. But we got to go all the way back because there's a lot of conditioning that must be unpacked. And again, remember the three parts: the subjective experience, the physiological response, and then the behavioral response. So when I don't get what I want, the subjective, right? The subjective experience, then the physiological response starts happening. Heart start beating real fast. I get all up in all up in arms. Blood starts circulating real fast. I start sweating, and then next thing you know, the behavioral response: you didn't do this, and you didn't do that, and you didn't do this, and the other person looking at me like, whoa, what just happened? So that's what happens. And why does it happen? Because it has been conditioning for quite some time. And the thing that you practice over and over and over and over and over again makes what they call the what is it? The on the tip of my tongue, the branches, the I can't say it right now, man. But the branches in the brain that's responsible for memory, they become thicker. So the thicker they are, the harder it is to change.
Mm. Think of the hard it is for change. Oh no. but I appreciate you helping clean that up a little bit because you said it in a more precise way. I couldn't. I was trying to figure it out, but I appreciate it.
It's like Al Jarreau said, we in this thing together.
Yeah, man. You in the same boat. I'm
So,
helping you. I'm gonna help you carry the boat.
hey man, we both carrying this boat.
Yeah.
Um, but we kind of tapped into it a little bit, start talking about upbringing and things of that nature, conditioning, and so forth and so on. So when we look at some like our early life experiences, like how do early life experiences shape our emotional responses? And what role does self-reflection play in uncovering these deep-seated patterns?
Well, let's when we look at our early life experiences, we take it we can look at our experiences that we have in our home and what we learned from our parents or parent or whoever raised us. Also, when we look at our early life, we also, I mean, depending on how early you get, we also got to throw in there all and everything that we've learned from our peers and classmates and teachers in elementary and middle school. If we looking at these really early years, all of the different response and actions and different things that we saw when we went to church every Wednesday and Friday and Saturday and Sunday, 3 or 4 or 5 times a week, right? So when we start off young, early in life, all of these different venues and all of these different people, we learn how to respond and we learn about emotions from all of these people, right? So mom and dad may be teaching this is the emotional response to when this happens. However, when your child is at school, they're getting, excuse me, they're learning a different way how Susie does it, and then the teacher does it a different way. So I do want to start by saying that we have to look at, when we're talking about early in life, there are different avenues of places that we learn from, to include, like I said, church, our immediate family, our outside family. School has a huge influence on our emotional responses to stuff. And if you are a parent, you probably have seen that. You probably have seen you tell your kids or teach your kids certain things, and then when they get in high school or middle school, you say something, and they come back with you with an emotional response that you know good and well would get their lips slapped off their face, their bill slapped off like Daffy Duck. You know what I'm saying? And you know that they learned that from school or somewhere else. So, with that part right there, I think all of those, just being in those different surroundings gives us good things and good places to learn from, hopefully. But the reality of it is that a lot of times we're going to get stuff from maybe not inside of the house. And what these different things look like is not always good, and then so these patterns and different things are being developed in us early on in life. And then now we take them with us to middle school, high school, college, the military, into our adulthood. Now we can start seeing some of the effects of these emotional responses as we become adults or as we get older in life, especially if we're not checking some of the negative emotional responses that we're having.
So I got like two parts of this conversation so far. I really want to go back and watch again. The first one was like your response when you was kind of like enacting something and you like sucked your teeth and looked up. I really want to go back and see that again because it was so smooth, right? But then the slapping your lips off like Daffy Duck, that's always like I say that all the
Bro.
time as well. But I love how you articulated your response because you're absolutely right. Um, I think for the most part, and I talk about this as a young parent because I had my first when I was 20 years old. Um, and it's I had no idea what I was doing. Totally clueless. Didn't have an instruction manual. My dad was, living his own life with his other family, and my mama couldn't tell me how to be a daddy, right? So I was just trying to figuring out en route, man. And I went back to what I've always heard, that men provide and protect. So that's what I made sure that I did. I provided and protect. I give that as a backdrop because when you look at how do early life experiences shape our emotional responses, well, the first phase I tend to look at is parental modeling. What type of model did they have from a parental standpoint? Well, for someone whose father wasn't in the home, I didn't really have my dad to model what that looks like. I didn't see how he handled his emotions. I didn't see how he, managed situations when somebody else's emotions went over the top and things of that nature. So I had to learn from my uncles. So I looked at what they did, and a lot of times I tried to emulate their behaviors, good, bad, or indifferent. And I stress that because there's a lot of great things that we got from our parents, but there's a lot of not so great things we got from them as well. And listen, I want to say it like this as well. Just because a parent is there does not necessarily mean that they're there. So it's not just the absentee parent, but it's the parent that is present, but they don't have presence. And in that, you look at two different concepts. They could be gone mentally, or they could be kind of like ignored, if you will. So both of those things matter. And so when you look at shaping our emotional responses, you have to look at the totality of the experience, the ecosystem of the person. So now we're talking about first what happens in the house, but then like you just said, what also happens out the house. What happens at school, what happens on the playground, what happens down the street at the park, what happens at the bus stop, what I'm saying? What happens in the backyard with little Jimmy and little Tommy when they're out there playing? Like, if look at all of these things. If this dude right here is a bully, and your child is constantly getting bullied, well, there's a secondary effect to it. It's not just the initial effect. Your child can somehow, in some cases, become a bully to somebody else as well because they are learning those bullying tactics from the bully that they're around. So, and a lot of times that's not the case. It could be just the opposite. So you have to look at the total system of the person, the entire ecosystem. And then for that person to either recognize, well, first recognize where these behaviors stem from and how have they manifested itself within me, I have to sit still and do some self reflection. Now, here's the issue. We like to say that we're our own worst critic, but we really are not. It's just something we say. Like sometimes, yeah, we do. When we're trying to do something good, we might be hard on ourselves. But when we're trying to change, oh, we give ourselves a whole lot of grace. In fact,
Mm.
we would give ourselves way more grace than we give the other person that actually did the exact same thing that we did. So we got to be honest. If you're not willing to be honest with yourself, then don't even have the conversation with yourself because you're wasting time. Be honest about what you observe in your behavior. I always say your behavior is the evidence of what you say you believe. So if I believe this thing, but I behave this particular type of way, then my behavior is only sharing with me whether or not I am as far along the line as I think I am or not. So now that causes me to go back and do some self analysis, right? I need to look at the evidence. I need to do some self assessment. I need to do some adjustments. And then I need to practice those micro adjustments that I made in self, right? So in my self reflection, it is important to look at the behaviors that I've seen my parents do. Did I get that from them? No. Okay, cool. Look at what I've seen my best friends do. Did I get that from them? No. Okay, cool. That's important because if I can identify where, not that the where is that important, but if I can identify where, then that also helps me to understand what I need to do moving forward in relation to dealing with those people, so forth and so on.
I like when you said, sometimes we like to give ourselves a lot more grace. You know what I mean? And I get that, and and I think that's when that helps stem some of this deserved mentality that I think a lot of people have too, to where they feel like they deserve certain things, even though they really haven't done anything. Like we give ourselves a lot of grace for um doing minimum things and giving ourselves passes for things when in reality, if we really want to change, we what I do is I kind of got a punishment system. Like I kind of, I kind of learned this from Eric Thomas. He was like, do you put yourself on punishment? Do you give yourself timeouts? Like, saying, hey, you know what, I want them cookies, but no, you gonna work out, then you gonna eat them cookies. You know what I mean? So like, or when if coach don't do what he's supposed to do, I'm gonna be the first one, but like, bro, you remember you said, we need to be here, an hour before the show, where you showed up 59 minutes. You wasn't on time, right? But then when I show up late, I don't want to hear nobody's mouth. Like
Mm,
I need to hold myself as much accountable as I hold other people. And I think that would help us grow a lot more if we
yeah,
really put boundaries on ourselves and
yeah.
hold ourselves accountable for stuff. We quick to hold somebody else accountable. But when it comes to us, a lot of times, oh man, give ourselves some grace. Yeah, man. It's okay, man. You did this and you did this, man. Don't worry about it. End up
Well,
in
I mean, since you said it, we might as well bring up the next question because
uh-oh.
you already started rolling into it. What are some tools? What are some tools and techniques that can help us gain this awareness and begin the
Oh,
journey of emotional mastery? Um,
oh.
no, you're good. You good.
I was gonna write it on my other whiteboard. It ain't up here. This one all marked up. That's why. So I use green. Now I'm using orange in between the green because I ain't
Yeah,
wiping it
yeah.
off. But I'm about to plug something. All right. So starts with a T and ends with a Y. Therapy. Right. I am a firm believer that sometimes you just need to go to therapy. You know what I mean? Because I think sometimes, um, especially as we get older, you
Right.
know, when you get to your 40s and your 50s and you're late and you still haven't figured out certain things, I'm not saying that you missed the boat. But what I am saying that it may be a time in your life to whereas your friends, your besties, your mamas, your grandma, the people you talk to on a regular basis, maybe they just don't really have the tools and stuff that they need to really help you and gain some of the awareness. So I know this ain't something we usually talk about and it ain't something that people advocate for, but I am going to advocate right now for some people. Sometimes you need to just go and get a therapist. There are a lot of things, a lot of people out there who have been trained and who have skills and who can help and teach you and give you skills that you can use and incorporate in your life to help gain some of this awareness and different things like this. Now, there are a bunch of tools and techniques and stuff like this, but again, I am just speaking for therapy itself and just letting people know that sometimes that's what you need to do, and it's okay. It don't mean that Big Mama's whatever she say ain't right. It don't mean that the pastor ain't right. But sometimes these people don't have the skills to give you so as when you walk away from the conversation, you have something that you can work on that's actually going to help you. Pastor got a lot of good information. Big Mama got a lot of information. Aunt got a lot of information, but some of these people don't have the tools to give you to actually help you down the road other than just the conversation. So my response to this, one word, therapy.
I love it. I love it. I'm to add to what you're saying. To the I'm gonna go to the left a little bit first, and I'm gonna start with humility. To tie in with what you're saying, there's a lot of people that walk around thinking they got it together, but when you look at them, they ain't got it together. I'm just being transparent, and I don't mean no harm when I say it. Sometimes, a lot of times, most times, all the time, we need to humble ourselves. That is one of the most important thing that one of the most important things that everybody has the ability to do. Humble yourself so that you can recognize that look, bro, I ain't got it all figured out. I don't have it all together. right? And then what I tend to do is I'll cocoon myself into what I think I got together, and then think I'm the captain of my cocoon. And then I exist in the cocoon by myself because nobody wants to play with my mental mess. That's really what it equates to. So, first and foremost, humble myself, then seek therapy, because I will never get to the point of recognizing that I need therapy because I'm so full of myself because I think I got it all together and everybody else is wrong. Like, if you really stop and think into that, that makes absolutely no sense. So, first, humble yourself, seek therapy, stop hunting information to put in a conglomerate of junk. I think, listen, man, we're in the information age and it is so much information out there. And we'll go over here and get information from this group and go over here and get information from this group. Oh, this sounds really good. Let me listen to that. And this time, only thing I'm doing is stockpiling stuff. Even the stuff I'm getting, even though it sounds good, I'm only stockpiling it on top of junk because I have not done the underlayer work yet. I need to go in my garden and pull my weeds before I plant more stuff on top of it. Because the only thing that's going to happen is that the weeds is going to choke out the new growth. And the new growth is going to suffocate because the weeds are literally thriving amongst all of the stuff. So I think when it comes down to that, that becomes one of the most important things to do as well. So humble yourself, seek therapy, stop hunting information, and focus on pulling the weeds out of your garden. Because when it comes down to self awareness, I think a lot of us, well, let me say it like this: when it comes down to self reflection, I think the reason why we don't do it is because we're afraid to discover what we might find out about ourselves.
Hey, you about to go into my talking point.
My bad.
I'm kidding, but you are. You like literally what I wrote down because I was like, I'm over here listening to you, and I was like, man, I gave the therapy answer, but I didn't really give anything tangible, actual a skill or a tool or anything. So I kind of want to add
Yeah.
to mine. So I want to give the people who are watching think and talk. So if you're looking for tool or technique, think and talk. So think was what Coach was just talking about, self-reflection. When you self-reflect, a lot more things become aware. I have made it a habit. I don't know how many years ago I started this. After every argument, I go back and I replay the argument, right? And I say, okay, what did you do wrong? Right. And I go back and look and see what I did wrong. And then I go and apologize. Why? Because 9 times out of 10, I did something wrong. And people say, well, what did you do wrong? You know, you was calm, you was blah, blah, blah. Did I have a negative thought that I wanted to say something negative to this person? Apologize to this person. Did I raise my voice? Did I interrupt? You know, so I go back. I think that's one good thing that help you become aware is go back and self-reflect. That's the think part. The talk part is talk to your people. Talk to your husband. Talk to your wife. Talk to your mama. Talk to your daddy. Ask them. Ask them if you got any issues or if there's anything that you need to work on. You know, somebody that you trust. Now, when they tell you that you need to work on something, accept it. You know, it's just their opinion. But I think, you know, one of the a tool or technique that we can do again is to self is think and talk, is self-reflect and look at ourselves and see what areas, you know what I mean, that we can that look at the awareness that we I think that one thing that we need to do is just that if we think about things and we become self-aware and we go back and self-reflect, it gives us the opportunity to see changes and things where we can improve. And then I think that when we talk to people, I think sometimes our friends and our people closest to us, they're going to be honest with us and they're going to say, hey, look, this is maybe an area that maybe you can be a little bit more polite when you talk to people or something like that. So I just kind of wanted to add that to the conversation.
No, you're good. I'm glad you did. And again, just so people can understand, I want to make sure I highlight it, and I want to keep saying this as throughout the conversation. Remember, Emotions are broken down into three categories, right? You have the subjective experience, you have the physiological response, and then you also have the behavioral response, and it happens, not at the same time. It happens in a line. So I will never have the behavioral response if I don't have the subjective opinion about the thing. So if I can catch it here, then this thing here will not respond. So that's why you hear us talk all the time. You hear us say, renew your mind, change the way you think, things of that nature, because that influences how this responds and how these act. And if I got to bring these out, that means I didn't check this at first. So that's why I love what he's saying right now. Like, talk to somebody else and get their response. Trust me, boo boo kitty. Everybody ain't wrong about you.
There
I'm
you
just
go.
I'm just keeping it real, and I'm not saying boo boo kitty as it being a woman. I'm just using that loosely. Everybody's not wrong about you. So if you have a line of people that's saying the exact same thing, chances are you got a blind spot that you cannot see about yourself. So
Mm.
it's okay. It doesn't make you a bad person. It
Nope.
does not make you a demon from wherever. It just means that this is something I need to pay attention to. And I like the fact that you mentioned your age. Like, it doesn't matter how old you are, you can change. But here's the deal: if you're using how old you are as an excuse not to change,
Mm.
I don't think I need to say anything else about that.
Yeah.
Um, and so that kind of leads as a great segue into recognizing emotional triggers and patterns, because talking to
Uh-oh.
people can help you with the patterns, but you got to have a little bit more profound conversation so that you can understand the triggers. So, how can we differentiate between a rational response and an emotional trigger in a high stress situation?
I'll tell you like this. Usually an emotional trigger in a high stress situation is looking for something immediate, usually to help conquer whatever that emotional or feeling is. That's what it's looking to do. A rational response is probably thinking about something probably long term. What are the ramifications of my response? You know, if coach says X, Y, and Z to me, how I respond may determine whether or not we're going to have a civilized conversation or I'm gonna end up with a knuckle sandwich. So I got to think about my response in the long term in that heated, emotional, high stress situation, because there are consequences if you choose the wrong path. So I just think that how we can determine the difference between the two. I ain't trying to say that word. How we can determine the difference between the two is look at what are you thinking about in that moment, and is what you're thinking about looking to satisfy an immediate need to deal with that trigger, or is it trying to come to a conclusion or a solution or something like that later on down the road. So that's what I think,
I love
how
it.
you determine the difference between the two.
I love it. I'm gonna keep it simple initially up front, right? How can we differentiate the difference between a rational response and emotional trigger? If I'm trying to figure out whether I responded rationally or emotionally, check my pulse. My
Mm.
pulse will tell on me every time, because when I am triggered, my heart rate elevates every time, guaranteed. That's why I highlighted the physiological response. You will have a physical response to a thing that triggers you. Okay? Check your pulse, check your breathing, right? See if you're sweating. Those are clear indicators that I can check for myself. I don't have to talk to Garfield about it. I can check myself and say, man, that kind of touched me a little bit, brother. Give me a second, right? Let me think about this for a second before I respond, right? And I love what he said, because he's right. A lot of times we tend to respond emotionally and think the other person don't have the wherewithal to realize that we responded emotionally. Sad face. You're subject to the response now. But seriously, that's how you do it. Check yourself. If you are part of a team, relationship, friendship, and you're with that person, and you detect that they were triggered about a thing, just put your hand on them for a second. Just touch them. because sometimes all it takes is for you to break the energy field. When you touch them and they feel you touch them, they be like, and then you be like, you got to say nothing, just dip your head a little bit, and then that causes them to kind of reflect on themselves. But again, that's based upon the relationship that you guys have. Like if me and Garfield are out someplace, let's just say we at, I don't know, we going shopping because he want to buy the latest pair of Jordan. That's what he does. He likes shoes, right?
Yeah.
So he out buying shoes, and let's just say somebody disrespect him. Well, I know I'm in good company. Like he isn't going to fly off the handle, but if I notice that he gets a little amped up, I'm gonna touch him and I'm gonna move in front of him and I'm gonna try to take over the conversation to protect him. Right? That's what people do for one another. People who mean each other good. But I, I guess I struggle when I see people who see their friend getting irate and then they get irate right along with them because they want to take part in what's going on. So
Mhm.
again, check your pulse, check your breathing, right? See if you're sweating. That's what you can do for yourself. But for people that you're with, your friends, family, whatever the case may be, watch each other, look at each other, see how they're responding. If you, oh, another one. If a person starts stuttering, that means they're trying to get it out so fast. It's just, hold on. Let's think about this before you finish that statement, right? Hold on a second. Just process it first. Let it come to you. Say it in a way that honors who you are and what you represent. And sometimes just that little break with you talking to them, right? Because you're not talking at them, you're talking to them because you see that they're ready to just pop off, right? So you're talking to them, say, hey, slow it down a little bit, catch yourself, think about it, then let it go. Because I'm telling you, that's a clear indicator. When they get to stuttering,
Mhm.
yeah, hold on, wait a minute. Let's think about this first.
You don't have to share, but have you ever been in a situation, in a high intensity situation, to where you had to make a rational response versus making the emotional response?
I have been several times.
Yes.
I'm not even
Yes.
going to talk about the army, right?
Mhm.
I think the first, I'm gonna be I'm gonna be as transparent as I possibly can based
Mhm.
upon what I remember.
Yeah.
I think the first time, because we young and you know how it is, we full of testosterone, uncontrolled emotions, all kind of other stuff. That so then somebody want to get in your face and they want to challenge you. I knew I needed not to participate in that because of what the potential second and third order effects were. Now, for me, I know like my family. My family is we're very protective of one another. And so one of the things we always talk about is that don't get yourself into a situation that's going to have to cause somebody to come and rescue you, whether we're talking going to jail, whether we're talking, what I'm saying, coming to participate in what you started. So the first time I did it, I really felt, and for the lack of better terms, I really felt like a punk. I was like, wait, hold up, that didn't really feel good. Like I walked away from a fight. Like I don't. Then as I started thinking about it, I started feeling better about it because at that point, I want to say I was like 17, something like that. But at that point, again, kind of feeling like a punk. I wonder what everybody else thinking because that's what you do at that young age. How they gonna see me? What they think about me? Things of that nature. And then I started thinking about it. And an older gentleman who watched the whole thing, he called me. He said, come here. He said, come here, young buck. So I went over there to him. He said, I know what you're doing. He said, I know what you're doing right now. He said, stop it. He said, you're questioning what you just did. He said, let me tell you this. He said, what you just did was probably the most honorable thing that could have been done in that situation. He said, now think about what could have happened if you had let your emotion, well, let your feelings, that's what he said, let your feelings get the best of you. And I'm paraphrasing because I can't remember everything he said. You got to realize this was years ago. But he said, imagine what could have happened if you had let your feelings get the best of you. Like y'all could have gotten, scrapping fisticuffs. Or worst case scenario, somebody could have just, you know. So now you're looking at something that could have been harmless got harmful, and then people going to the hospital, so forth and so on. And so I think then, just listening to him because he was very calm and he had that deep voice. And you know how it is when you're a young man and you hear another, older man with a deep voice that just kind of penetrates and vibrates deep within. So what he was saying like meant something to me. Plus, remind you, my dad's not home. My dad's not there. So I'm listening to what he is saying, and I'm like thinking like, hmm, I know he don't know me from a can of paint, but this conversation really sounds like he cares about me. So I listened, and I was like, okay, that makes sense. Because, like you said, you got your whole future ahead of you. You don't want to throw it away from one moment when you lose control of your temper and you just want to retaliate and you don't want to look like a punk. He said that's stupid. Don't ever he said don't ever worry about you looking like a punk. He said always use this thing and make the appropriate decision in the appropriate time so that you can do the things that you are called to do.
Bro, looking like a punk. Hold on. I don't think people really understand what it takes to walk away. I think a lot of times people take it for granted when men walk away from things. Walking away is hard, and having to deal with yourself after you walk away from a fight is hard too. When you like, man, I wanted to give it to that dude or that person and walk away, you feel embarrassed, you feel weak, you feel less of a man sometimes. Now, we talking about in the streets. I ain't even going to talk about in our own homes. The amount, the amount of pressure that is on men to control themselves. And let me back up. I am going to say men. I'm just speaking on men just for this piece, right? Um, Please, I'm not trying to offend anybody else, but I am just speaking. I am a man. I can't speak from a woman's perspective. When I speak from a woman's perspective, is using generalities or what I've heard because I ain't a woman, 100% man. So when we want to be aggressive and we can't, it can be hard sometimes. We can't treat you the way we treat our boys. I can't treat my wife and be aggressive as aggressively with my wife as I can be with coach or some dude in the street, right? I understand that. That is why it is very important for everybody in the house to have good, effective communicating skills. Because you get to those communicating, you have good, great, effective communicating skills. Hopefully, you don't have to get to that point to whereas people are verbally and physically abusing each other. I don't know why I went all there, but for some reason I did. So hopefully maybe somebody got something out of it, maybe even me.
I say you went there because it was necessary.
Mm,
But I'm gonna go to the other side with you while you're there, because I'm with you. I don't know what it's like to be a woman. I've never
mhm,
been a woman. But here's the thing that I know. I know that there are some men who buck up against women just because that they can.
mm,
So what I would say, woman, please walk away. I mean, don't take the physical abuse. Don't take the verbal abuse. Just decide to walk away and then go talk to somebody. You see what I'm saying? Like if you're in a situation to where said dude come home, highly intoxicated, whatever the case may be, and then he decides he want to look at you and be aggressive with you, like don't try to go toe to toe like that. I don't that may not work out well. You see what I'm saying? Like it's okay to
mhm,
walk away. It's okay to pack an overnight bag. Yeah, you may have to deal with the consequences the next day when you come home. Go stay at your girlfriend's house. Call from your girlfriend's house. Let them hear your girlfriend in the background, whatever the case may be. Call the people and call the people. Get an escort. Do whatever it is you got to do. But I think for me, and I'm just saying it this way because I grew up. This is the reason why my mom and my daddy wasn't together. I grew up watching it. You know what I'm saying? In Heidelberg, Germany. I seen it with my own eyes. And it wasn't a pretty sight. And don't get me wrong, I say it all the time. My mom ain't no joke. I've seen it. Ain't no joke, bro. I think she taught Mike Tyson how to do it.
Mm.
But you should never have to go through that. And she pays it. There were some consequences for it. And she tells the story better than anybody. And I'm in awe when I listen to some of the things that she share. But I think for the most part, just being transparent in order for the home to get healthy, the home has to be free of violence.
Mm.
Regardless of who started it, somebody has to make an adult decision and end it. And I think that's the perfect segue into the next question. Because that being said, in what ways can recognizing our emotional triggers improve our professional performance and decision making processes?